Yeah, I'm Jim Awrach.
So
Uh, sure. And yeah, last name pronounced Awrach, but you know, whatever whatever you like. Howdy, she dances. That's my buddy Lissa. um, so yeah, so I am a MUFON CAG. That means Case Assistance Group Field Investigator. God bless you folks at MUFON for the promotion. It's all volunteer, but hell, I'll take it. And I am also an independent field investigator at ufo-report.com. Very cool stuff. I have a MS in electrical engineering from Texas Tech University. And God, please rest their souls. Some of my outstanding master's thesis professors, please don't roll over in your grave because Jim's into UFOs. There are professors from Texas Tech that way back in the Lubbock Lights, reported this and believed in it. And there are professors nowadays. And I like to come at this topic from the perspective of science and technology, which is what my YouTube UFO-report is all about. And last but not least, thank you so much, Hannibal, the Hannibal TV. He's been one of the best, most outstanding allies to myself and Mean Gene Sticko for Wicked Alien Radio, also on YouTube. Very big, powerful ally, and we're very thankful and grateful for all of your help in our disclosure efforts.
very good. Well, hopefully the Wi-Fi will fix itself as this goes on. But you're here today. We're going to start off by talking about consciousness, which I had Dr. Rudy on from Harvard the other week that you hooked me
Yeah.
up with, talking very deeply into consciousness. So why don't we let you take it away? And what do you know about consciousness from your research?
Yeah. So very interesting thing. Um, we look. Gene complimented me in that I'm one of a few people that actually. More and more people are reading his book, but I'm one of a few that actually uh, read it nearly page to page, but it is so in depth that I have to read it again, and again. One thing that sticks out in Gene Sticko's book, basically the works of Valeris, the scientist reverse engineering UFO, is the gentleman spoke about and wrote about consciousness controlling an NHI spacecraft that transcends space time, and it's kind of bizarre because you think that okay, in a most advanced case, crafts are supposed to be controlled. You've got your stick and throttle, whatever, but no, this is a spacecraft with aliens. Okay, so they control it with probes stuck to their head. Nope. Okay, ESP. Nope. Goes beyond that. Consciousness. And for God's sakes, what exactly is consciousness, which is what we're going to talk about in a second. But what's interesting is, so the works of Valeris in Gene Sticko's book talks about that. That's how the craft is controlled. And there's a shift in humanity over time, spirituality, and more self-awareness and consciousness, which, believe it or not, there are college classes. I took one at UMass Lowell. It was called Psychology of Consciousness. Your consciousness, believe it or not, for better or worse, extends beyond your brain and beyond your body. For those that don't believe me, think about when you're at the hospital and you've got probes tapped to your head. You can pick up brain waves without anything being tapped to your head. There's some toys out there that work that way too, by the way. So the idea is consciousness through brain waves. Now, um, one of those folks that taught us about this was Dr. Rudy Schild, who was on the Hannibal TV not so long ago, and he spoke about brain waves and consciousness. And the other thing is there's a gentleman who's up and coming by the name of Dr. Andrew Morgan, and he speaks about consciousness. And what's very interesting in his work that we're going to talk about soon is that Dr. Andrew Morgan uses his his own personal NHI experience, along with his observations of nature and oceanography, to basically forward engineer or basically engineer a UFO craft that's controlled by human consciousness. So it's a craft for human use. And we're going to talk about that. Um, Another thing is that if you look at the work by Dr. Rudy, if you look at the work by Dr. Andrew, and of course, if you refer to Jane's book on Valeris's work, what they all have in common is they talk about the universe and the cosmos itself has a consciousness, and that, believe it or not, we are all part of that. And there are many scientists out there, cosmologists, which means basically the different universes together. So you've got galaxies within universes, universes within the cosmos, and the cosmos is one self-aware thing which ties into our conscious and the consciousness of other entities, not just humans. So that's kind of it in a bundle, uh, Hannibal, about the big picture of consciousness. If you want to follow up on that, that's cool. And if not, there was
Well,
something
no. So,
from,
what's your on your research? What happens then when you pass away?
yeah. So that's interesting. My personal belief, Somalia, you're watching and making fun of you now. But anyway, someone, well, actually, a pet passed away one time, and she tried to console me and say, "Jimmy, don't worry, you know, Grover's in the spirit world now." And I got so pissed off. I'm like, Mom, this isn't the good old Western days of Indians dancing around a campfire in the spirit world, right? And gotta apologize, Mom. You're almost always right. What I've come to learn as a field investigator, both through speaking with higher ups and also experiencers and doing research on my own, is that the human being, living organism, has energy fields, and so forth. Depending on your meditation, you can feel energy flowing through your body depending on which type of meditation you do. I've done that myself, and also depending on which courses you take in college, you learn that your consciousness extends beyond your body. And when somebody passes away, there are many highly reputable scientists, Dr. Rudy Schild, one of countless, that say that you're just passing on to the next stage of being. And some people believe that your, call it a soul, or just call it your energy or whatnot, transcends into a collective energy. Um, Other people, like myself, I believe, and what I've learned is that your consciousness basically leaves your body, very similar to what the well-known remote viewer uh, Joe McMoneagle had said. Um, he was a remote viewer, I think, also for the CIA, and he said you have an out of body experience that transcends your living body, and you see so much more. And actually, you tend to look at your human being self as, oh boy, that's unusual, or that's kind of, I'm going to paraphrase, apologies, Joe, but the way I took it is it's kind of like, almost like you saying that's yucky or how crude or whatever, just because you would be at a higher state of being. So my belief is that if you want to call it a soul, but your consciousness and your energy just transcends beyond the body. I can't tell you from my experience as a field investigator and from my own personal experiences. I have had some out of body experiences, which I know that sounds crazy, but believe it or not, many people have. And there are other things that we could show, if you like, Hannibal, as far as like a video clip, and also something from Dr. Rudy, all about that.
Is that one of the clips that you sent me?
Yeah. So the one that's red, Um, that I actually put in red and filtered it. So what's interesting about that is normally it's white, but if you take a good look, folks, at the actual movement of that dot in the center, it- then you're going to see a flicker, and then it's going to be zoomed in. But the idea is if you take a look at the movement of that red dot, which I filtered it, it's actually white, but it's very dark at night. I'll explain it in a sec. There's such a significant amount of movement that in fact, it is not what is referred to as a dancing star or as starlight twinkling. Um, those wondering, this is not from an active official case. This was submitted to me privately from a pair of friends that I like to refer to as ill squared. That's ILL2, ill squared. Hello. I had to filter it into the red for the simple reason that when you look at it in the plain dark of the night, you can see it, but you really have to look close at the screen and at the video to see the pinpoint of light. It just didn't come out easily enough on the phone camera when you take it. So it came out, but not quite enough. So that red just exaggerates it. Something I'd like to add to that, Hannibal, is about the consciousness itself. Um, there are different thoughts as to why that entity, or let's call it an anomaly, because sometimes it behaves like it's a star, other times it behaves like an anomaly. Why does it do that? And so the witness believes that there is some sort of. I did get permission to speak on behalf of the witness as far as what both of them believe, that there's some sort of mental telepathy connection. Thus, the entity and they both have awareness of each other's consciousness. Um, so my belief is similar, but I think it's kind of on a quantum entanglement level, which is something that Dr. Rudy Schild explained. But the very interesting thing about that is I have other footage. I don't have it readily available now. Is when the witness actually spoke to it and verbally said, "Could you show me more movement?" It did. And when the witness asked, "Could it move horizontally?" It did. When I saw the thing in person, um, I visited twice when it was an active case, and the first out of two times I actually saw this anomaly behave anomalous. What it is, I'm not convinced yet, but I know it's paranormal. It's not normal, and I believe it's tied to consciousness. But crazy thing, because the second time I was really prepared with all sorts of equipment, all sorts of calibration. The first time I was like, "Oh my God, can I borrow your binoculars?" The second time I had my binoculars, had calibration. I had Stellarium, it's pronounced Stellar IUM, Stellarium on my phone, which is a great handheld gadget, which it's an app you can download, shows you the night sky so you can figure out what everything is. And guess what? The second time when I was totally scrutinous, that thing barely misbehaved, if at all, because I was paying attention. The first time I was open minded, right? And the first time I wasn't really thinking about anything. I wasn't really that scrutinous. I was very open minded. And boy, did that thing misbehave. We're talking about 30 degrees this way. We're talking about maybe 30 or 40 degrees that way. I told Lieutenant Ryan about it when we met him several weeks ago, just north of Boston, and he was interested. And of course, he wasn't there, but he said basically based on that description, sure, it's not what would be referred to as a dancing star, which you would have similar movements, but you're only talking about by you know a few degrees that way or this way, not like that. That's totally different.
Yeah, I had one out of body experience, but I didn't even realize it until the next night. I was listening to one of those things, tapes that help you sleep. And the first night I had one of those dreams where I was falling and I woke up and it literally felt real and I like just jolted up. Then the second night, I actually didn't fall asleep while listening to it. And I realized that there was a part in this where you're having an out of body experience and you're floating out of your body. And then it says you fall back into your body. And then I'm like, that's what happened yesterday. Why I woke up with such a
Oh,
jolt. It was because I was falling back into my body. But then, of course, after I heard that, I could never get it again. But it was like, it was such confirmation the next night when I heard that because it was startling how big I woke up that night.
oh yeah, yeah. I totally believe. And what's really interesting about that, Hannibal, is a lot of times you have to be in a certain meditative state. So people that regularly perform out of body experiences, like you know, you know the the well known during the Cold War, the U.S. and the Soviets spying on each other. So out of body. So Joe McMoneagle was one of those folks. They're trained to do it, and they can do it. And for some of us mere mortals that don't do it regularly, the more you notice, this weird stuff happening, or that you remember the next day when you wake up, the more you realize, geez, I wasn't quite asleep then. And it's at that very fine line, Hannibal, where you're almost asleep but not quite, or that you're almost awake but not quite. I mean, it could still happen when you're asleep, but I did check this with a few ufologists, and they agree that when you're in that state, it's like a very, very relaxed state. And that is when a lot of out of body experiences happen. It totally makes sense.
So was yours a meditation designed to have one?
Nope. Did you say, Hannibal, that you got jolted out of it, kind of like, holy crap, what was that?
Yeah, well, it was like a relaxation sleep hypnosis.
Yeah.
But then I got jolted up, and it felt like I had literally fallen off a building and hit a floor and woke up because I actually sat up and everything, and I just found it weird. But then, as I said, the next night I didn't fall asleep through that part of the recording, and I heard that what happened was I actually did what it was saying. I had it in the recording. It says you're floating out of your body,
Wow.
and then now you're going back in. So I
Yeah.
think that was the experience of whatever it was. My spirit went back into my body. But the one thing I will say is I did have a very close to near death experience where I was in the hospital for about a month and I came very close to death and I had no type of near death experience or anything. So that is one thing that kind of worries me a little bit.
No, I got you. So yeah, they say, I agree. I mean, that is a common thing among paranormal experts, that if you had a near death experience, um, then which I actually did have one, which I was I don't remember it too much, but I do believe I was saved. I mean, it's not 100% in certitude, but I do believe that I was saved because what happened was I was on a camping trip back in the day in Cub Scouts. Um, a couple close friends, my best friend, and all that stuff. And I forget where it was in Massachusetts. I like to call this place. And all the scouts were jumping over something in the dark because we were exploring a fort that was, an old World War II fort. And and then we had scout, couple of adult scout leaders in there, and then the rest of us kids, Cub Scouts, whatever. So we're weekend trip, and all the scouts are jumping over. But I'm an engineering nerd. I'm not athletic whatsoever. And back in the day, I had no idea what the heck they were jumping over, and I didn't have a flashlight, which was really stupid if you're going on a camper trip. So I saw them jumping, so I figured, it's just I forget how old I was. Maybe I don't know, was I 8 or something? So I just looked. I said, okay, whatever. I'll just jump in a general direction, and foomp, down a freaking hole, which at least at my age felt like a bottomless pit. And I, to this day, I know for a fact that I went down, and then the next thing I know, everything was dark, nothing, and 2 or 3 seconds later, my arms were on either side of that hole, and I was back. And I believe that somebody watched me and said, no, 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 that was a mistake. It's not his time yet. Put him back. That's what my belief is. And a lot of people say, oh no, it's a natural reaction. Is I don't know. I'm not athletic, and I don't I don't I don't think that it was anything normal. And to me, that was my near death experience, which maybe that's why I get this bizarre, on occasion, remote viewing. But it's definitely not purposely induced, Hannibal. It's, with me, it tends to be when I'm almost ready to fall asleep, and that sensation you got where you hit the ground. With me, it's like so vivid that it's like, holy shit, what was that? But folks I work with, don't worry, I'm not nuts. It's, this is paranormal discussions, so whatever.
Yeah, with mine, and I won't talk about what happened to me, but I was extremely close to death. I was pretty much out of it for 3 days and then in the hospital for a month. I never had like any visions or anything, but I do definitely believe there's something out there because I should have died at that point. So I do believe that there is
Wow.
something out there, just like you think you should have died for your reason. But
Yep.
one thing I was talking to Dr. Rudy about the other day, and I know you wanted to kind of bring this up,
Yeah.
is ever since I've been researching, it hasn't actually happened really since I brought it up with Dr. Rudy, strangely enough. It hasn't happened, I can't think even one time since I brought it up to him.
Yeah.
But for the past 2 years or so, I have very vivid and realistic alien nightmares a lot of the times and sleep paralysis type things. Do you think that's just because I research this so much and often go to sleep listening to this stuff? Or do you think there's some type of communication happening? Rudy said it could be a bit of both.
I
I
agree
really
with
don't know.
I agree with Dr. Rudy. All I can say is, God, to know Dr. Rudy is to become addicted to the guy. He is very, very kind-hearted, lovable, and a great loyal friend, and what a mentor. And I swear, I swear by every word he says, and so and he's honest. If he thinks something is not accurate or not true, Hannibal, then he'll say, well, he'll be nice about it, but say, well, I don't think so, or I'm not sure. You might. So I mean, the fact that he says that could be a little bit of both. I agree, because that definitely jives with what a lot of experiencers um, have. It's it I do believe it's a little bit of both. And the interesting thing too is the way the brain works. At least the way I learned from Dr. Rudy is is really, um, the brain has not been proven that your consciousness is contained within your brain, baby. It's only been proven that your consciousness is present around your brain. And that jives with, again, folks, I took psychology of consciousness in my undergrad at UMass at Lowell, and it talks about the homunculus. You have a bundle of sensations and feelings and whatnot. Um, so I think it all makes sense, and I agree with that one, Hannibal, for sure.
Yeah, because there's definitely been some times where I've literally had to sit on the side of the bed, turn on the light, and just for like 5 or 10 minutes sit there and say, okay, this was just a dream. I was just imagining that. It did not actually happen. And I never had anything. It's not like I was regularly having that before I started researching this stuff. But that goes into like how do you think that they communicate with us? Because we always hear telepathic.
That's a good one. There's a lot of ground to cover here. Really, we'll go really really quick on this, but because I don't want to soak up too much time. But
Well, we
how
can
does
always have you back. We don't want to overload people, but
okay,
jump into it.
okay, okay. Here. Well, then we'll jump. We'll forget about the technicalities because it's like engineering nerds like me. And trust me, quantum entanglement, like Rudy says, and we can demonstrate that afterwards. Really
Yeah.
easy. So if
And
we
I'm
jump in,
sure there are a lot of those watching. I'm sure a lot of the wrestling fans have tuned out by this point.
um, so if we look at the if you look at the picture, it's a newspaper clipping from 1952. It shows plasmoids above the U.S. Capitol, and that was and so that's a very famous typical picture from when the U.S. was performing nuke tests in the early 1950s. And Dr. Beatriz Villarroel studied and released her findings in some journal publications and interviews where she found that there were plasmoids in well orbiting Earth, anyways, that were recorded in old photographic plates from astronomical observatories at the same time as when the U.S. was testing nukes, at the same time as those newspaper articles were released. And there's another one from Salem, Mass, 1952. So in the same time frame, like we're talking about, within I believe days or at least weeks. Salem, Mass, 1952. Yeah, a few more there. Yeah, guess what? That's legit. That was actually taken by. Oh, if you hear squeaking, that's my puppy. I'll get her in a second. That was actually taken by the U.S. Coast Guard, right? So you know it's legit, and that's actually in the U.S. Navy files, and it's under examination of Project Blue Book. Lo and behold, plasmoid is those newspaper illustrations in 1952, same time as when Dr. Beatriz Villarroel said, "Hey, I've proven that plasmoids were in the area right after the nukes." And there's one
Where the
really
hell did you go? Hold on. Somehow you disappeared when I can hear you. I don't know if the fans can hear you, but I can't. That's bizarre.
let's see what happened
We took the
there.
picture out and now now you're now it's just oh, there you're back. Okay.
Am I
Perfect.
back?
Yeah, I can see you again now. There we go.
Okay. Um, cool. So if you could, Hannibal, if you could please put on that there's a plasmoid video, and we could talk about this. This is really a good one. This one
Mi
is
material.
Yeah, I'll put it on and I'll take us out.
damn it. Is there is is there audio? There should be audio on that, Hannibal, because you can hear NASA talking, that's key. Because you see, Hannibal, NASA's been covering this up, and this is a really good
So what are
example.
they? Okay, I don't think there was. Maybe the audio didn't download properly or something because I don't
That's
believe
too
there.
bad.
So what is
Okay,
this? Tell us what
okay.
it is.
So yeah, maybe I can. Is it worth it for me to? Well, God, I don't want to. Let's see. What happens if I do the plus? You said
You
I
could.
could.
That means you could share a screen to get the audio.
Oh God, I hope I don't mess this up. All right, I'll leave it alone. Okay, we'll post the link afterwards for you folks. But
Okay.
the idea is, right, Dr. Rudy Schild's colleague, right, that I finally got a hold of him. Very difficult guy to get a hold of. Brilliant guy. Dr. Ron Joseph came across a treasure trove of NASA videos with plasmoids. Now, the interesting thing about these plasmoids is they are the identical shape of what you saw in that actual picture from the U.S. Coast Guard in 1952 and what you saw in that illustration in that newspaper from 1952, nuke tests, which jives with Dr. Beatriz Villarroel. These are actual NASA files from a space shuttle, the first space shuttle mission, I believe was the first one, or one right after the Challenger disaster, the very next mission that went to the International Space Station. And NASA forgot to redact these videos. And so Dr. Rowan Joseph came upon these videos. I'll skip the details how. That's another discussion. But what they're talking about there is NASA says, please confirm these are just reflections. And the astronauts in the space shuttle say, I'm paraphrasing, negative. The one in the center is, I don't think it's stationary, and the other two that are moving, all three of them are not reflections over. And this is part of a very, very long, well-documented video by Dr. Rowan Joseph, which we can post, and it jives with the newspaper article and the picture from the U.S. Coast Guard, which proves those plasmoids are out there, and it's very consistent with the way that we were actually, like you said, Hannibal. How do they communicate? Well, that's one way, because boy, they were around in
What is a
1952.
plasmoid for those that don't know? Tell us what these things are, in your opinion.
Sure. So a plasmoid, very interesting. If you want to pull up the paper from Dr. Rowan while we talk, you could, but you don't have to. But it's let's see. There we go. Yeah. That's Dr. Rowan Joseph is the first author, and Dr. Rudy Schild is the last author. So that's just the paper for those that are interested, and that's actually how I found Dr. Rudy. Very fascinating. So they discuss how plasmoids, right? Plasma is a fourth state of matter. Plasmoids are an intelligent form of life, or they call it intelligent pre-life. Very fascinating. And what it talks about here is, number one, what a plasmoid is. Number two, the components, and they make analogies to human organs, except they're organs within a plasmoid. The first thing is, what is plasma? Plasma is an ionized gas. So what's ionized gas? Well, if you think about it, right? If you ever look at those globes and they're like plasma balls or whatever, and people are touching them, and oh, look at that, the purple plasma has touched my finger. That's an example of plasma. A very, very crude example is when you light a match or when you light a cigarette lighter, then that flame, you could see around it is a glow or a slightly different color. So you're ionizing the air around it. And so technically that's plasma, although not completely, but that gives you an idea. So it's not necessarily the flame, but it's the fact that you're taking, in this case, air, oxygen, nitrogen, whatever, and you're breaking it up so that they're charged particles. So in other words, a gas, like the air you breathe, but it's got charge in it. That's plasma. So a plasmoid is an entity, like Dr. Rudy explained on your show a few weeks ago, Hannibal. Sometimes they're in a form of an orb or whatnot. A self-contained entity, or kind of like a gaseous entity that has intelligent behavior, or that has a type of consciousness to it. The thing actually behaves like it's self-aware, because it is. Which is consistent with the whole idea of, the fabulous Tedesco brothers, what they've studied with plasmoids, with Dr. Andrew, who we'll get to soon, has discovered with plasmoids, and so it's a consciousness that's contained within an ionized gas. Why ionized gas? Well, you could say. I don't know why flesh and blood. I mean, it is what it is. But when we transcend to our next energy level or whatnot, leave our soul, then you know our energy leaves our body, in my belief, and it could very well be in the form of a plasmoid, because that could contain our energy.
So you think they have something to do with extraterrestrials?
Oh, absolutely. Very, very interesting question too, Hannibal. Nobody knows the answer, only speculations. Um, Not even Dr. Rudy knows, but he said it was a very good question. You know how you have like ghost hunters or Ghost Hunters International, and once in a while when they're in a haunted house, they'll see like a levitating or floating glowing orb, and they're like, well, it's paranormal energy and stuff. On the other hand, right, we have so many ufologists out there that have measured these and document these, and you know they're in a lot of cases orbs. Dr. Rudy says, yeah, orbs are NHIs that are trying to establish communication, and other folks are saying, ghost hunters. Well, these are past souls or some sort of energy from deceased soul or something. So I always ask, are those two things, orbs and haunted houses, and orbs or plasmoids that we see with NHI, are those two things one and the same? And nobody knows, but boy, wouldn't that be interesting to find that one out?
Oh yeah, 100%. So, what do you think of all the possibilities? And of course, there's probably numerous of them. But what is the purpose of these visitations, or are they actually ultra terrestrials that have been here all along?
Yeah, so yeah, so my opinion, Hannibal, is that at least the plasmoids, in my opinion, have been here all along, and the reason why I say that is, for God's sakes, you know, they're in the NASA videos that Dr. Joseph said he caught hell for releasing them, but I'll tell you, I'm sure he thinks it's worth it. Um, I do. I did excellent documentation based on what Dr. Joseph and Dr. Schild published. It seems to me that they've been here all along in what's called the thermosphere, which is just, it's basically on the verge of outer space. And based on what happened in 1952, and then if you go back, people say, some ufologists say, the Bible quotes things that, clearly, like I think they call it the book of Enoch, or the chapter of Enoch, or something like that. From there you could equate things to non-human intelligence. I really don't know, but I would say, based on all of that, and based on things even like I spoke about a long time ago with you folks about what's known as the Rohank Codex, which is an old script. I'm not sure if it's even been translated, but it references transcending space time. That goes back, I want to say, to almost like maybe a few hundred AD. I think, I can't remember exactly. Really old. I honestly think it's been around maybe even before us. Now the other stuff with these craft sightings and abductions, and there's all sorts of other beings and entities. You know, God only knows, because I'll tell you, there's so many different reports out there of objects and being contacted, and people reporting that they've been taken away from the planet. Um, you know, anybody's guess is good about that one, but I feel, my belief is that the plasmoids have always been here.
Yeah, and we're hearing there could be over 70 races of ETs, and I literally spend hours studying it every day. And there's definitely various types that all seem to have different intentions, and some are kinder to humans than others, and some are kinder to animals than others, apparently.
Yeah, yeah,
So I don't know, but for now, I guess the good thing is nothing's negative has really happened to us yet, other than nukes getting turned off for short periods of time. But as they say, it's really only been about 5 generations now since we've been what, horse and buggy to where we are now. So maybe we weren't a threat until now. Now we're kind of entering their territory if uh, if they are actually from outer space. And also with these bombs and weapons and stuff, if they have bases here, which we're hearing they probably do from congressmen,
Yeah.
Do you think there's a chance some of these weapons could affect their bases, are they just technological enough that it wouldn't affect them at all?
Yeah. What a that's a I'll skip I'll skip the F part, but that's definitely a cluster of of a uh, of a question and an idea, because if you think about it, right, um, the you know nuclear fusion, fission, all that stuff, um, mucks really it mucks with time space fabric. So Hannibal, I totally buy into the into things like there was a gentleman by the name of Lieutenant Philip Corso. He released a book a long time ago, Day After Roswell, and one of the points in that book was that our bombs are mucking with space-time fabric, which is messing up non-human intelligence's trying to come and go places. So I think, yeah, it's clearly a threat. Other experts, I like to quote Joe McMonagle. He said that a lot of activity lately that's come out, um, he feels that they cannot harm us or they won't harm us, but they're sure trying to scare the living shit out of us because they want us to stop mucking around with bombing each other. Um, it's so I Another interesting thing too is my hair is a threat. I don't know. I don't know. I like my
You're doing better than me.
it depends. I mean, yeah, I know I get a color, but that's cool though. That's funny. Um, so um,
And supposedly nuclear bombs can also knock. Well, at one point they could, anyways. At least in the 40s, supposedly knock UFOs out of space, and that's supposedly why they did that big Operation Starfish Prime test. Was not really a nuclear test. Supposedly, there's some people that say it was actually designed to knock some UAPs down, but supposedly they may have found a way around that now, from what I understand. It's
it's
the EMP. It's the EMPs, right? It
yeah,
messes with the UAP, the way
yeah.
that the UAPs operate.
And it's kind of I mean, I'm all for national security. We totally need that. Um, but I guess my concern is you know what you know we want to knock them out. Well, hopefully, you know the U.S. needs to be secure, but hopefully we're at least considerate, and it's only as a defensive thing, and we're not just like the way I like to go fishing with my kids, and oh, let's see what we can catch, and hopefully we're not doing that, or at least nowadays we're not doing that, but. That's definitely for sure though the way the way they're trying to do that for defense. It's kind of interesting. What is funny too is there's a gentleman, Hannibal, by the name of Dr. Andrew Morgan that I just spoke with, and talking about how UFOs and UAPs impact us, and what we can do to counteract them. This gentleman, Dr. Andrew Morgan, down under in Australia, he's with the Australian Department of Education. Clever guy. He has his own startup and seeking funding. Brilliant, brilliant guy. Based on his observations and experiences being, an NHI experiencer in his childhood, and based on his observations of nature, he went ahead and he reverse engineered what he believed to be how UFO UAP technology works, and what he came up with actually was really interesting. The guy is actually got a startup now, and it's what I believe, in my opinion, to be the first publicly available. Well, when he cranks it out, UFO meant for human operation. In other words, come on in, step inside, and transcend space time made for human beings. That's what this guy is doing, which is really really freaking cool. Um, there's if you could, Hannibal, there's just a few slides that I'd like to
Yeah,
show
and
the
I'll just say
folks.
quick for you saying how can we protect ourselves against them. According to Dr. James Lakatsky a few weeks ago, he's the former DIA intelligence officer. He publicly said that if the because he was asked, should we be concerned about what they could do to us, and he said that if we knew what our real capabilities were for protecting the planet, I guess, and the US, we would not be concerned. So he didn't, he kind of hinted we could even be working with one form of the ETs to develop this type of defense. But as a former DIA intelligence officer, he said on the record, if we knew, we would not be worried. We and that was in response to a three eye atlas question, which, as I'm looking for those papers, let me just, before we get into this, because a lot of people are asking about it,
Okay.
they were that was in response to someone asking, what if three eye atlas was a negative thing? Could we protect ourselves? Well, it turns out that three eye atlas was kind of overplayed, right?
Do you have a weird format thing on your screen? Like it's narrow.
Oh, are you not seeing something?
Well, I get it on my my TV, and it looks narrow again.
Uh, one of you might be looking at the wrong one because I think it's two. There might be two different formats, but let's find the
Oh,
picture you're talking about. Which one are you talking about?
oh,
Which
that's
one do you want me to
okay.
show? This
Okay,
one?
no, that's good. That's good. That's good. That's
Okay.
good. Yep. Thanks. So what doc thank you. So Dr. Andrew Morgan, what he did was he came up with something based on, I believe his PhD is in oceanography and marine life, permeable membranes, which basically means that water can go through, or other fluids, so kind of like ocean life. Um, that allows this call it a human designed UAP, meant for human navigation, to go transmedium from the air into the water, the way we observe with UAPs. Then really clever guy. It's got what's known as a polycrystalline surface on the outside. For those of us that just want that in plain English, that simply means that it's a type of crystal. Think of quartz or something like that, um, and that allows sound vibrations. The sound vibrations basically get aligned with what's known as some sort of cosmic field. A lot of ufologists and scientists are talking about that. This type of field that's present in the cosmos and the universe and the galaxy here on Earth. So this thing is a combination of those two, along with plasma, which we spoke about on the outside. And the end result is you've got electric fields, electromagnetic fields. You've got, yep, that's his conception right there of what this thing could look like. Incredible. And that's another one of his engineering. Call it forward engineering of a UAP craft, and how it operates. Very very clever gentleman. Um, and he too talks about multi dimensions, although he talks about it a little bit different than the other ufologists. And that right there, folks, for those of you engineering and science nerds that are curious, that's an example of a permeable membrane. It's called a porphyrin membrane that he designed, and that's based on what he's seen in nature that basically allows this craft to go from air into water without impacting the passengers on the inside. This is very cool, Hannibal. So now this is Dr. Andrews' earlier work, and what he found was that there are orbs on the left and there are rods on the right. Both of these are plasma based. In his study, the ones on the right, Dr. Andrew Morgan believes are some sort of non-human intelligence originated nanotechnology craft, or at least the appearance of something that leads to nanotechnology. On the left, Dr. Andrew, in one of his papers, basically described it and said that he believes those are more, let's call it biological or actual intelligence based, non human intelligence. So, those on the left, what's really interesting is you'll notice at the very bottom, you can see orbs. You can see an orb, and as you go further up and up and up, it gets dimmer and dimmer until finally it's gone. On the right, you'll see that the rods, for the most part, are visible. The reason for that Dr. Morgan explained, is that these orbs have a consciousness. They've got an awareness, and they do not like being watched. As for example, the Tedesco brothers often talk about. A lot of these things do not like to be watched, and so that's why in that picture from Dr. Morgan, it shows that the orb disappears. It does what's called a phase shift. But on the right of that picture, we notice that those rods did not disappear because let's see, it's where it is two more pictures to the right. Let's see, to the left by two. There it is. So we notice that the rods on the right, the rod itself, did not disappear because really, according to what Dr. Morgan said, I believe his point was the consciousness, I believe, was controlled, I think, for NHI craft, or else maybe his point was that it didn't really care in this case. The entity on the right did not care what was being observed. The one on the left, the orbs are known to not uh, generally not like being observed. And that's what that's all about, which is really interesting when it comes to consciousness and NHI.
And actually, I've heard, through my research, and I do believe this, they do not want to be disclosed. And I think that's the real reason why worldwide they haven't been disclosed yet. Because I think Donald Trump would have done it already, to be honest.
It's yeah, isn't that a ponderance if you think about it, because that was really interesting. And with all due respect to President Trump, I was quite surprised because he was making a big deal, not only about this disclosure, but also about the drones. And I just thought it was funny because he kept on saying what an outrage it was, and that'll be one of the first things. And then he got in office, and obviously one of the most difficult jobs in the world, no question. But you know, what was it, 2 or 3 weeks later, and one of the media asked again, and he just turns to the at least on TV, he turned to the left and he said, "Oh yeah, could you look into that, please, and get me an answer?" Very casually. And then
Yeah.
whoever it was speaking on his behalf said there were research drones and other things.
Yeah, because I remember, yeah, I was following it so closely. He said he knew exactly what it was and he was going to disclose it. And he said that 3 times before. And then you're exactly right. He was asked, and then he pretended that he kind of didn't know. Oh, let's check in on that. Then he was asked again, and then finally he didn't even say anything. It was a statement put out. I do think he may eventually say something because I guess according to polls right now,
Yeah.
something may have been leaked because there's like a 96 or 98% betting odds out there that he is going to disclose in some form that we are being visited, but it might be very, very. I don't think there's going to be any full disclosure or anything like that.
Here's a shot in the dark guess. I wonder if he's going to disclose what's already been published by scientists like Dr. Pietras for a while and Dr. Rowan Joseph about these plasmoids that are in the thermosphere, almost on the verge of outer space. Because Dr.
He's not going to
Joseph,
get into that. I
you
can
don't think he'll get
guarantee
into
you.
that?
No, that's too much. That's too much information. When you get into that, that's like proof that that's a little bit more scary than yes, there are things out there that we don't know what they are.
Because the scientists already put it in journals, peer
Right.
reviewed. You know, that's. But you don't think he'll even touch it, huh?
I think that's a little too scary because I think I do think the main reason is that they don't want us to be disclosed. But if you actually really think about the plasmoid stuff, it's a little unsettling to people, and I don't think they're going to want to panic people.
I agree. Although, I mean, to me, it's just Hannibal. To me, it's just another. Well, I'm not trivializing it, but it's just another form of life. Like, every day, or many times, during every month, someone discovers a new type of animal that we either thought was extinct, or look at this, there's a new type of underwater marine life. So why wouldn't there be things in the air or in outer space that that you know that we're not aware of? So to me, a plasmoid, is just that. Why not?
Looks like
But
you got to run in.
Hey,
it's Mean Gene Sticko.
what's happening, guys?
Hey, good to see you, man.
Good, you too. Don't mind me. I just figured I saw you all online. I'm like, well, shit, I'll just go backstage and hang out.
I thought you might have something to say about plasmoids, Gene, because we haven't heard you talk about that yet.
What, is that the subject of tonight? I was on the road, so I
Oh,
wasn't
that's
able to
just
catch the show.
that's what we were just discussing. We were showing some of Jim's videos of plasmoids.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I don't know. Again, I always default back to, my father-in-law's work as my source of knowledge.
Hmm.
And he talks a lot in there about plasma, and there's a little bit of a translation thing because it's also described as lightning balls,
Yeah.
linguistically. But a lot of the videos that I see where, there are there are those plasmoids around or coming from. It just, it just makes me wonder really what is the relationship? Where are they? Is it just an optical thing that we are processing or how our brains process it? Particularly when it looks like, crafts are emerging from or shaping into plasmoids. Is that just a transitional thing like our brain can't reconcile quite yet? So
That's in
obviously,
alignment with what Dr. Rudy says in terms of when these things try to materialize, Gene, because they want to communicate.
yeah.
It'll kind of coincide with what it is that the human being would most expect to see. So that's a really good point.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like I said, it's in the paperwork. It's there. I haven't begun to wrap my mind around it, but definitely there that's worth exploring.
Someone saying aliens are AI. That I was actually listening to one of Jacques Vallée's books the other night about dimensions, and he was figuring a lot of UFOs could be holograms and stuff that where it's purposely trickery and things by various governments for whatever reason to think. And I'm not saying all of them, but in some cases that could be the case. But this guy is saying all of them are AI. So what are your thoughts? Could it be possible that in some cases this is really something other than visitors?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends if, the context of what's your definition of AI? Is it, purely talking about human made AI, or, AI that belongs to NHI, not to go down the acronym route too deep. But yeah, so I think, and I've heard those. I mean, I think some of the theories out there about the biologics themselves, that the biologics are part of a self-generating AI program, and they sort of create themselves along the way in order to generate, or in order to create the beings themselves. So there's probably some truth somewhere in the middle of that. Certainly within the realm of possibility, certainly within the realm of, I think I've heard some things about the spheres and such being, more AI controlled. That's aligned with even some of the work we do in the military, right? We now have aircraft that are followed by drones, and those drones are controlled by the electronic interfaces in pilots' helmets and all that. So yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to explore. I had another AI theory when it comes to sort of the AI that we use and are most familiar with, day to day, that we get in the likes of, the GPTs, and, thinking about the neural networks that are developed in machine learning, and things like, how they hallucinate, and do they hallucinate? Are they not really hallucinating in the sense that they're making stuff up, but they are accessing a realm of an information energy field that has maybe not yet fully synchronized, or is a little bit out of sync with the reality we experience?
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily hallucinating, but these neural networks are not limited in the same way that our consciousness might be limited to universal energy and information. And it's trying to reconcile that. It doesn't quite have the same guardrails. So I think certainly, a lot to explore and look into and consider, the more it becomes integrated with our daily lives.
Very good. Lots of people have questions on here, so I'll get to a couple more. And what do you guys think about if the UN has knowledge of this? Do you think this is something that the United Nation actually talk about, or is it just country to country?
I mean, my opinion is, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Gene, but my perception at least is, between all your work with your father-in-law Valeris, and you've shown those patents, and then there's a gentleman out there, Dr. Chong, talking about China's knowledge of reverse engineering. My own opinion is that it's contained within the countries, and I don't think it, there was collaboration. I think you know better than me, between the U.S. and the Soviets at one point, but other than that, I tend to believe it's contained within each country. I don't know what you would think.
Yeah, I think that's the approach that they've been taking. There was a period, I think it was in the late 70s or early 80s, that there was one small nation, I believe it was a Central American or South American nation, that was actually pushing for a UFO committee, or and pushing for these kinds of discussions. And they raised it, maybe 2 or 3 times, and they just had zero support for it, in the United Nations. So, I think a lot of people might be familiar with the UN does have a standing committee or organization on the peaceful use of space, which is primarily focused on, things like the International Space Station, and multi-nation cooperative efforts, both, I think, in terms of even like asteroid defense and things like that. So they cover it, but they don't they have never publicly, and I've never seen any sort of leaning or indication of the UN itself having an appetite to take on or consolidate the UAP NHI issue as a body.
Jim, you wanted me to bring up scientists' interactions with non-human intelligence. What do you know about what there
Ah,
has been, and what do you think they would want to do as far as interactions
yeah,
if they haven't already had some?
yeah. That's a good one. So touching on Dr. Rowan Joseph again, Rudy's colleague. Um, so that's the one where he came across a treasure trove of the NASA non-redacted videos that they accidentally released to him, and they were pissed off at him afterwards, but for their mistake. But that was that publication that you put up earlier, Hannibal. And so in that publication, I missed it, but when I spoke with Dr. Joseph, he pointed out to me that he proposed that he's like, hey, um, how about this? How about a grassroots effort to interact? Here we go again with these plasmoids, with these intelligent NHIs um, that are on basically in outer space. And why not have a grassroots effort where very clever idea. We in other words, we the people make a proposal, not necessarily something like GoFundMe.com or whatever it is, but similar idea where you say, hey, everybody be a part of this. What we're going to do is we're going to send a few satellites out there, a couple satellites to observe, and then a third satellite to stimulate and communicate with these things. And so basically a public offering. So start off private, whatever, get enough funding. He thinks it should be able to easily raise $1 billion. So he told me to just put it out there when I spoke with him last week. And people, power to the people, and they fund it. Get a few satellites up there, and the satellite in the middle is the one that's stimulating and signaling these plasmoid NHIs, and in this case, in terms of flashing different plasma pump, um, different pulses or colors of light, and in other cases, different frequencies. He was explaining to me that if you tune a radio, especially on an AM, you can hear a whistling. Sometimes it sounds kind of like a type of up and down whistling thing. And he said that actually plasmoids actually communicate on different radio frequencies that do things like that. So if you could send a satellite up there that has different light pulses, different radio frequencies, and so forth to attract these things, similar to the way that I believe it was the Skywatch group had this so-called dog whistle. So send one of those up there and have two more satellites go up there to observe. Then basically, anybody who contributes or anybody who subscribes, they could watch it on a website or whatever to see how these things, interact with each other and what they're all about. And they're really amazing things. I mean, some of them kind of graze, like call them grazing cattle. Others are aggressive and they attack other ones. Um, Others are attracted to lightning storms, and then others it looks like they're mating with each other, and then a third plasmoid comes out. And he said, "Wouldn't that be cool?" With those type of plans that he had, if the people just continued with our own grassroots disclosure effort and just everybody puts in however much, you just raise it and they own a piece of that company or whatnot, and we could have our own plasma YouTube. So that's Dr. Rowan Joseph on that publication that you put up.
Did either you or Gene see the trailer for Steven Spielberg's new Disclosure Day movie that came out last week? Apparently, it's going to be coming out next year. I wasn't very impressed with it. Just from I was hoping it was going to be more of a documentary type thing where they would actually disclose, where it definitely seems to be more of a Hollywood movie. But I guess it was hard to tell what narrative they're going to be taking in it. There's a lot of people with theories and talking about hidden meanings from it, but to me, it wasn't what I was expecting. What about you guys?
Go ahead, Gene.
Yeah, no, I've seen it. I mean, my first reaction, my first reaction was like, oh God, we've got 6 months of this ahead of us. Just like you said, all of the picking apart and diving into and trying to analyze and decode, what the intended messages are that are in the trailer, that are in the visuals, the billboard they put up in Times Square. I mean, we had how many days or a week or two of that. To me personally, it's just friggin' exhausting, right? And it's not going to get us anywhere, right? Nobody is going to decode anything from the Steven Spielberg trailers that is going to force the president of the United States or any world leader to say, oh, you got us. You found the super secret message we hired Steven Spielberg to place in the movie, and he put in the trailer, and you got us. And, everybody just opened the archives. So I don't get the point.
Yeah.
Right? It's a film.
Yeah.
Looks interesting to a degree. I guess we will learn more about it in the coming months as they as they release more trailers and the actors start doing press, and we'll get the actors' opinions, about what they learned and what they might have believed before filming it, and what they've seen, believed since. And maybe some of them become engaged in the discussion themselves. It's 6 months. That's a long time to be devoting that much attention to a movie ad nauseum. Relax.
Yeah.
Hey, there's an honest review.
Yeah.
I mean, am I excited for it? Well, yeah,
Yeah, you're excited. Right.
It looks interesting to a degree. That's the best line ever.
I guess Gene's review kind of reminds me of a buddy of mine that Chili's has gotten a lot better, and I like their menu now, but kind of reminds me of the Chili's restaurant menu up to maybe a few years ago, where a buddy of mine said, it's hard for me to get excited over a minuscule strip of steak with all sorts of fat in it. They're much better nowadays, but that's kind of like what, that kind of epitomizes what Gene's saying. Cause, when I looked at the trailer, it's kind of like, you would want it to be awe-inspiring and holy crap. And even if there's fiction, but all I got to say is what got me into this almost 9 years ago was, if Gene's book was there 9 years ago, that would have got me into this. But what was there 9 years ago was Lou Elizondo's, I believe it started on the History Channel, but I'm not sure. But when it came to regular streaming TV, his show with Lieutenant Ryan Graves and of course Admiral Tim and all that, and Lou talking about it and so forth. And I looked at those videos, Gimbal, and I was like, holy crap, this stuff is real. And people I showed it to, they're like, yeah, there's something to it. We're not saying what, we're just saying there's more to it than just hocus pocus. And to me, that was enthralling. This, my own personal opinion is, looking at the trailer is not, I didn't get blown away by it.
Looks like, it looks like a little bit of a psychological thriller, right? And so, yeah, again, it'll be interesting. I'm more interested. I haven't really seen anything outside of sort of the movie world of people being like, oh, a new Spielberg, alien movies coming out, and how exciting is that in a general context. But I haven't sort of seen anybody from the general public for which this issue is, beyond tertiary in, their lives, who seem to be like, oh, this is going to be a great summer blockbuster. I mean, it comes out in June. Is that what it's meant to be, is a summer blockbuster? Then maybe as we get closer, we'll see, more of the what is going to make it a blockbuster.
And I haven't seen, other than when it first came out, the publicity it got, the age of disclosure. I didn't see that convert too many people just because of the cost of it. So hopefully, as it becomes more available, maybe that will get some more people interested. But someone has a good question here. He's tipping us $1, or that might be pounds, I think, even.
Wow.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Paul. What's your best guess on what the government knows? Gene might be the best one to answer that, and Jim. But Gene, you used to work for the government, so
Yeah, but not in a UAP capacity. Just for
No.
the
in the
caveat.
military.
What do I think the government? I think the government essentially knows everything, and if there is something they do not know, or if there is still an outstanding question, I think that question revolves more around the the threats or the risks
Yeah.
that are posed, and that in and of itself may be of varying degrees. So there may be, in intelligence, you talk in terms of confidence. There might be, high confidence in certain NHI as not being a threat or posing an existential crisis to the order of things. And there might be lower unknown threats that are out there. I base, most of that not only on what we hear and we get from whistleblowers and things, but also what I see in plans like the continuity of government plans, things, mainly rest within FEMA, let's say, which is, the most public touching agency that we as the general public would be engaged with, in case of an emergency of some kind.
Yeah.
And so there's language in that, in the planning, preparation, and response, that speaks to sort of all domain threats that they're trying to capture. So what does the government know? I think the government knows most all, when it comes to existence and perhaps even, structures and NHI and civilizations of NHI and things like that.
Yeah.
And so, but I think if there is an uncertainty, or what might be less known, if there is something less known, is really in that threat profile, and that might be the thing they can't answer or don't want to answer.
Yeah, I got 2 cents, but nothing like Gene. But my 2 cents is which government officials are being informed, and then which government officials are are in the know and told not to say anything. As far as the ones that are or are not being informed, I did have the pleasure of speaking with Tim Phillips a couple times, former deputy director of Arrow. Gene was with us on the second discussion, and as far as Tim knows, when he was looking, into cases and into disclosure and so forth, very honorable, honest person. retired lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Marine Corps. So, highest amount of honor and honesty. And I totally believe him when he says he did not see any evidence whatsoever of non-human intelligence, nor did he see any evidence of cover-ups. And he always had access to everything he requested. And when he got any kind of hesitation whatsoever, all it took was a phone call to like an undersecretary of defense, and they made the call to whomever was resisting, and they said, okay, and here, what do you need? So as far as what I could say is from Tim's perspective, from what he told me, there are those government officials who do or have performed investigations, and they didn't see any evidence. Whether or not there are other government officials aware of evidence on that part is another story. But then there's another aspect: government officials that are in the know, like we were talking about Dr. Owen Joseph's, disclosed, NASA videos of, okay, they're only plasmoids, they're kind of primitive, but they're non-human intelligent. And we just spoke about, well, maybe that would cause a panic, whatever. It's in there, it's been published and so forth. But apparently, and we couldn't figure out why, because I was talking to Dr. Joseph, I said, why do you think it is that NASA would want that redacted? Somehow it accidentally got to Dr. Joseph, and why is it they wouldn't want that coming out? And the only answer we could come up with together was, we don't know why, but there is a who, and the question is, who is it preventing it? And and God only knows that. Maybe it is another type of NHI that's preventing it. But I mean, in certitude, I could say from seeing those videos myself, they exist. Therefore, NASA knows about it. Therefore, I would think the whole government knows about it. So who is it that's saying no, don't officially announce it?
Yeah, well, Paul Hellyer, former Canadian Minister of Defense, said that NASA, in his knowledge, definitely knows about what's going on. Here's a question that I think you were talking about earlier when you were discussing plasmoids. What do you think about the quality of home frequency relationship? And I'm not even sure I understand that.
Yeah, home frequency relationship. Is he talking about like you got Wi-Fi at home, or does he mean like when you're? I'm not sure what he means either.
I don't know if that's like because you always hear with ghosts and stuff, if there's negative energy in the house or something.
Well, that could make sense. Oh yeah, Hannibal. From that perspective, there's so-called remnants of negative energy, which is negative energetic fields or happy fields, whatnot, which is fields or a form of consciousness for sure. So I mean, if that's what he meant, home frequency relationships, I buy into that.
Have you heard much about the different types of beings, or are you just more into the mechanics like Gene is?
Well, I mean, I've heard about it, and there are ufologists, but I won't quote them by name, but there are pretty intelligent ufologists, PhD level, that believe that there are multiple races, and that there is some sort of battle. I'm not sure if I buy into the battle part, but it's a common, I don't know if I want to call it a conspiracy theory, but so there's at least supposedly we've got reptilians, we've got the Greys, and a lot of people believe the Greys are some sort of biological robot, and then the Nords. I don't know, maybe Gene knows better than me on that, but I mean, those are really the only three.
Yeah.
Okay, actually, I love plasmoids, and there's the plasmoids.
Right. The quick question I had related to that before I bring it back to you guys is, how many of these actually wear clothes, and if the ones that aren't wear clothes, would that obviously they're probably more of the robotic ones, because you hear a lot that these Star Trek suits are actually what some of these beings actually wear, and some of them also wear helmets and stuff, which I
Mhm.
guess would have to do with maybe they can't breathe the air here. And others don't, but it's interesting that there seems to be so many distinct types.
Yeah, I think I don't know who it was. If it was Dolan or that wrote a book. There was like seven species. Again, like you said, Hannibal. I'm more. I'm just trying to keep my arms around the technical stuff right now. Like let's just get let's just get something disclosed and let's get on a path before we're literally counting our aliens before they pop out of our stomachs.
Well, if you count, like Dr. Avi says, he says, let's not investigate microbes because if you're going to have dinner with a microbe, it would be a very boring dinner. But if you count microbes, I'm sure they're out there. So, the plasmoids and the microbes, so we know there's at least 5.
Maybe.
What do you guys think about the moon? Someone's bringing up the moon. Why do you think we haven't been back as often as we might think we should have been?
Yeah, that that's a tricky one, huh? Because there are still people that there are known ufologists that believe that the moon was nothing more than a hoax, and proof that the American flag was wavering and stuff. I don't think the angry astronaut buys that at all, and he's a pretty reliable source. So I'm just trying to go by out loud, think a line of reasoning. Like, you know what I think. There are some people that out there, and I forget who that I'm quoting, but they just believe that we lost that touch, maybe between the know-how and the training. I guess it seems trivial, but it takes an awful lot to get on the frickin' moon if you think about it. I mean, seems trivial, but that thing's pretty damn far away, and it looks close to us compared to everything else. To time everything right, you blast off and you get your orbits and all that stuff. I would think that's part of it, technically. Um, and if you look at the if you look at the the YouTubes that talk about redacted audio from landing on the moon and discussion, they've unfiltered it, however you call it, unredacting it, and you hear them talk about a fleet of something or a base of something on the moon. So I'm not sure if I buy into that, but there's definitely something out there or on there that's another challenge that they weren't planning for. So I think one thing is whatever the heck it is they were talking about that's on there that for some reason got redacted. And then the other thing, I think it's one of those things that if you're rusty, you need to practice up again when you shoot the pool before you can start scoring again. So I think it's just been a really, really long time for us.
Yeah, and my short answer on that is I tend to buy into. I can subscribe to the idea that the moon is artificial, that it was placed. Now, whether there's a giant conference center on the inside, I'm not ready to go down that road yet. But that it was placed. I think if we well, I believe that we went there. Why didn't we go back? I think number one, because we didn't have a plan to. We politically just wanted to prove we could do it, so we did it, and we came back with what we came back with. And I think there were probably answers that came back that we were not prepared for, and there has neither been the scientific need or the political will to go back. I mean, I think the whole effort in and of itself was a propaganda, um, necessity at the time, that was pushed. So, but I think they went. They came back, they learned things they weren't expecting to learn, and nobody really knew what to do about the things that they learned.
Hmm.
Very
I, I
interesting.
I disagree with the comment, although I appreciate. I mean, I think you have an um, awesome viewer base, by the way, Hannibal. But in terms of the moon uh, being useless, the reason why I disagree is it's supposed to be a staging point to getting to the next place, like Mars. Plus, thing is, if also if if we can't establish ourselves on the moon, unless we're really already there, but if we can't, then how the frick we gonna get to Mars? So that's the only reason why I disagree with that one.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, my tendency to lean towards or be able to digest the idea of it being artificial is, I think perhaps it is artificial because it was used to begin to provide some stability to the environment on the Earth to make it more habitable at some point. Because we have those old stories of the time when there was no moon, and all the rest of it. So I think if it's there, it definitely serves a function.
Cool.
Very good. Well, I got to get to the gym before it closes at 9 tonight. Is there anything else you guys want to bring up before you get off? Of course, Jim, you're welcome back on anytime. That was very interesting. You
Very
guys can
yeah.
keep going if you want.
Oh, I'm good, but yeah, no, thank you for
Yeah.
I
the
appreciate
invite.
all the fan questions on here too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I appreciate you letting me jump in. I
yeah,
hijacked some time. Like I said, I saw you guys on there. I was like, I get some time. Let me pop on. So
yeah.
good
It's
seeing you
totally
as always, Hannibal.
yeah, yeah. Thanks so much. Yeah, it was awesome.
So, Engineering Infinity is Gene's book, and he's got a new one out about oil too. And what's your website again? Engineering Infinity
Book.com.
book.com. And yours, Jim?
Just UFO-report.com.
The UFO
Yep,
report.com.
yep.
Well, Merry Christmas to you guys too. And I'll let you
Merry
guys
Christmas.
close it off with whatever you want to tell the.
Go for it, Jim. I'm out.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, visit UFO-report.com and send a picture or video or any kind of case story, and be happy to take a look at it for you, and maybe we could talk about it.